Brandon Aiyuk. What's your feeling on Aiyuk? Caught three balls for 49 yards in the game, and it's there's been like kind of a lot of smoke around Aiyuk as far as he's under contract for 2024 already. John Lynch said the Niners are extremely prideful in what he's become as a player. Lynch said, of course you want a guy like Brandon Aiyuk to be part of you moving forward. He's technically under contract this year. The Niners exercised the fifth-year option. It'll be the final year of his rookie deal. He was asked, you know, what he'd remember the most about the Niners roster this past season. He said, after a long pause, guys that came into work to be champions every single day. He got very emotional at his locker talking about his teammates. And he was asked what was the hardest part of the postseason, that he had just experienced. He shook his head and turned around and said, that's all I got. There was also some quotes from his brother saying that he'd like to be elsewhere. That is like, this is how you treat, this is how you treat a receiver. I forget how the exact quote, but 1,300-yard receiver. He gets 3 targets in the game. That's why, he said something about going to Vegas and, maybe suggested maybe playing for the Raiders. I know everything's fresh and everything, and it's on social media. It's like Aiyuk, his brother, and his girlfriend all have made it seem like he's a goner. And then he put out, "Don't forget what got you there," with the eye emoji, and then his brother put out, "This is the exact reason we leaving San Francisco. Thank you, 49ers, for drafting my brother. We are forever grateful. BA to Vegas." And then it says, why does your all-pro 1,300-yard receiver have 3 catches in the Super Bowl? I don't know. I mean, it's weird. Then there's the question of, do the 49ers want to have 2 wide receivers on a team that throws the ball, is 32nd in the NFL in passing attempts? Do you want 2 wide receivers making over $50 million of your cap? And so I don't know. I mean, what do you think? What's Aiyuk's future? There's also a story out today. Nathaniel Marrero is speculating that Aiyuk could be headed to the Commanders. He said Brandon Aiyuk is a name to keep an eye on this offseason. He's entering the final year of his rookie contract. His cap hit will jump to $14 million. Aiyuk was asked if he wants to return. He said if that's the right move, and then he basically grew his statement to say, well, if we can win a championship. Now the Commanders have Adam Peters. Aiyuk's only 25. The Commanders do have they've got the most cap space in the NFL with over $80 million. They also have 6 picks in the top 102. They could put a very nice trade offer involving draft picks in front of the 49ers. What do you think? What's your guess? Is Aiyuk going to be here, or are they going to trade him?
I think he's back. But also remember last year, it was remember before the draft, he had like the last 5th-year option picked up, which if you had said at the beginning of the offseason, rank the most obvious 5th-year option guys, Aiyuk would have been on tier 1, like the most obvious 5th-year option guys. And remember, he tweeted like that Friday morning of the draft that his phone rang. He's like, oh, my heart jumped. He thought he was getting traded. He thought he was out. And it was weird. Like, why aren't they picking up his 5th-year option? What is going on? So you have to believe that they thought about it last year. And I do think you have to be open to the possibility that one of these guys, that somebody's gone, right? That's just generally how things eventually have to happen. Once upon a time, DeForest Buckner was gone. And Kyle Shanahan said yesterday, we could have kept him, but it just would have meant, other people not being here, potentially Aiyuk actually being one of them. But I don't put a lot of stock in what's happened the last few days. Now, I think it's definitely possible that they trade him because they need help, right? They need how are you if you're drafting 31? How are you going to get the help you need on the interior line? You're going to have to replace one of these receivers eventually. It doesn't look like Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell are trending into that direction. Now, maybe it's too early to tell on Ronnie, but I don't know what you think. I don't think it's trending in the direction that it doesn't feel like they went from Kendrick Bourne to Juwan Jennings. It doesn't feel like they got the next guy in line on this roster. I don't think. That's my read on those two guys after 2 years of Danny Gray and 1 year of Ronnie Bell. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe there's not enough data.
What would you want in return for Aiyuk? I mean, he's one of the best receivers in the game. I mean, if let's just say it was the Commanders, you're not getting their first round pick, right? That's the second pick in the draft. Okay, right. So but they do have pick 36, pick 40. So they have 2 picks in the top 40. They also have the third pick of the third round, 67, and then they pick at the last pick of the third round, 100. I mean, in some ways, I might want all 4 of those picks. I mean, if I'm not getting a first-round pick, I'm going to trade you Brandon Aiyuk at age 25, and you're going to have one of the NFL's best wide receivers at age 25. There's no way I'm making that trade unless I'm getting both those 2s and at least one of those 3s, right?
Yeah. I mean, because to me, if you're going to do that deal, you're doing it because you want to replace him with a blue chipper at another position, and so you need to get back into the middle of the first round. So you need enough ammo to get back into the middle of the first round and still have another pick left over for yourself, right?
I mean, he's one of the better receivers in football. This guy's had back-to-back seasons with at least 75 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns.
And he's your guy. And I do think so much of what Brock does, the Niners don't have a deep threat receiver, right? Debo, you and I have been talking about this since training camp. None of their guys really separate over the top. So when you throw it to Debo and McDuffie down the middle down the seam into the end zone, like he doesn't win that route ever. But I do think Brock could throw it if he had that type of guy. So maybe ultimately that's the type of receiver you want. But I think if you want like another blue chip offensive lineman, not only to help this team but to help set up what comes after Trent Williams, then you need to be in the middle of the first round. And to do that, you're going to need at least, I think you need 3 picks if none of them are a first rounder. And then you use your first and a second to move up, or your first and a second and a third to move up, and you still have the second because you also lack depth. Right? The fact that Drake Jackson hasn't hit really hurts this team right now. Maybe he'll develop. The fact that Diamador Lenore did hit helps this team. Hufanga coming back helps them. But yeah, Larry, I think it's very possible that he's traded. My initial point, though, is I don't think anything that got said on social media the last 3 days has any bearing on what happens next. This is child's play compared to what the Debo situation. And I think they like Aiyuk as a guy. They love Aiyuk as a guy. He's everything they want. So, at this point, I still tend to think he'll be back.
It's a weird one, though, because they did, Juwan Jennings is, I thought almost for sure slated to leave, right? Just because you have Debo, you want Aiyuk, you're not going to pay Aiyuk, Debo, and Jennings, most likely. And Jennings had a great playoff run and a great Super Bowl, and, he's a key cog. So, I mean, do you let Jennings go? Would you because Jennings isn't going to fetch anything in free agency. You can't trade Jennings. You could trade Aiyuk.
And then you're saying, and then Jennings costs a fraction of what Aiyuk cost. That's where you sign.
Right. I mean, and you got, here's the other thing for me in this draft, just peeking ahead to the draft. I really, really like Stephen Rice from SC, Jerry's kid, who's 6'4", runs pretty well, but has great route running, hands, catch it in a crowd. I mean, I really think he's going to be a very good NFL receiver. I don't know if he's going to be.
Not Steven. His name's not Steven.
It's not? No. Stefan?
I don't think so. No, why am I blank?
Brandon
Rice.
Brandon. Yeah, Brandon Rice. That's right. Yeah, Brandon Rice. I really like Brendan Rice. Brendan Rice.
He was at the Super Bowl on behalf of Breathe Right.
He's 6'4", He plays the game with tremendous urgency. You can see he's got great hands. He does
He's a good returner. He's a good kickoff returner.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a burner. I don't know what he's going to run, but my eyes tell me he's going to run like, maybe 4.49, maybe 5.51, 5.1, 4.51, 4.52, something like that. He's somewhere in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s.
He blocks.
Yeah, and he's big and he plays with urgency. I'd like to have him. Christian said he'd love to play with Luke. Luke McCaffrey, I think, had a really nice year this year at Rice as a receiver. He used to be a quarterback, so it was his first year. He was all conference. Yeah, we'll see how he runs, but I think he's a day 3 pick. So I'm just saying there are some receivers. It's a good receiver draft. It has been, it seems like, every year for the last 3 or 4. There's just a lot of receivers coming out of the college game right now.